Greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. Today I'm excited to bring you yet another great crossover figure from Masterverse, and that's the CGI Skeletor from the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe CGI show from Netflix. This version of Skeletor is awesome, and if you haven't watched the show to check out this version yet, you really should. There's definitely some things about him that are quite different, but the voice work and just the animation of the actual model is spectacular. They find a way to make Skeletor very menacing, but also very funny, and it's the kind of thing that I know kids will love. Before we begin though, be sure to subscribe, make sure that you like the video, and comment at the end to let me know what you think of old Bonehead here. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the box. On the side, it says Skeletor, the Dark Master of Havoc, which is a big focus of the show, Havoc. And on the back, we have this awesome image of Skeletor. I actually like this quite a bit better than the He-Man art, even though the He-Man art was really nice. This seems just a little more epic in the posing and the staging of the piece. Skeletor, Dark Master of Havoc. Prince Keldor once tried to take over Castle Grayskull, but the dark magic Havoc cursed him, slowly devouring his flesh. Now free from his stasis shell, the Mad Prince once again craves power, this time embracing his curse as a blessing, allowing the magic to consume and transform him into Skeletor, the Dark Master of Havoc. It's always worth noting that on the side there is a separate art piece that's always commissioned, and this too is absolutely gorgeous. So I know that it's probably a struggle at Mattel to figure out which one they're going to put where. At the bottom, you can see that we do have the UPC code in case you need that. Mattel is still doing the weird thing where they put it at the top as well. All right, let's go ahead and get this guy freed from his stasis shell. And here we have the Overlord of Evil himself, Skeletor. We got him out of the box, and I have to say, even out of the box, he seems even bigger. This guy is gargantuan, and you know, the thing is, He-Man, I talked about how big he was, but this guy is even that much larger. Pretty much He-Man comes up to about here on him, as you'll see later with some of the comparisons and things. But this guy is even heavier as well because he has an incredibly heavy Havoc staff. So there's just a lot of mass here. Also worth noting that if you haven't seen my He-Man review, be sure to check it out. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we'll look at all the little details on Skeletor. Just like He-Man before him, his proportions are exactly what you would expect. Of course, the sculpt seems almost to be taken from a digital source to ensure the most accuracy to the CGI show. This is where the fantastic detail work begins. As you can see, he's got a fully sculpted head that actually moves around in there. But the thing is, the hood is fixed at the shoulders, so you're just able to kind of move it around like that, and that's the best that we can kind of see of the head sculpt inside of the hood. But they do a really good job of having some little tampographic details in there for the eyes and coloring the nose and the sides of the jaw with black, something that the other figures haven't always done. And of course we get all of this kind of green Havoc lava, I almost call it, kind of oozing from his neck, just like in the show. A little bit of black slop right there, but that could be easily corrected, or a little bit of mist paint. And then of course down here we have the harness join here, and it looks fantastic. Moving on down, he has his Evil Master belt, and if you notice in the show, they all have like toothy mouths on their belt buckles, so that's a great little highlight. Something that gets overlooked is, in a lot of representations of this version of Skeletor, is how there's like a pink trim and a dark purple or black kind of interior to the loincloth piece, so it's great that they have it. Skeletor's burgundy/purple pants, and of course the insane boots, which don't really get enough attention on this design. These are really fantastic looking. They have such a bestial look. And of course, Skeletor's monster feet. Now, what's funny is that he does have like heels on, I guess, like a part of a shoe, but the monster feet are definitely very prominent. Of course, in the cartoon, Skeletor's hand has kind of been eaten by Havoc, so you have this cool bone hand right here. I really do like that they go a little bit further in making Skeletor, well, skeletal in that show. So it's something that sets the design apart. Looking at the actual staff itself, we can see that they have the cool little touch of having a skull at the bottom of it, and working your way up, you have the actual ram's head of the Havoc staff, and you can see that there's a negative space in the nose there to where you can see right through it. Havoc is coursing its way through the horns, and turning it around, you can see that it's not really much to write home about, but just some interior details. There is a chain here that is attached, and it is a metal goods chain, and it is a little frustrating as you pose them around because there isn't exactly a perfect spot to wrap it from. There's no kind of hook or anything at the end of this chain. Instead, it seems like the best thing to do is to wrap it around this gauntlet here. And as you wrap it around, you just kind of figure out which one of the spikes that you want to put the last link in the chain over. And you just kind of fit it over. It's not the most secure thing in the world, but it does work fairly well. The one thing is this Havoc staff is so incredibly heavy that his hand tends to flop over with it. So if I give it a little bit of a, yeah. Now I will say this could be a much worse problem than it actually is, but it can be as you kind of rotate him around, and you can see that that kind of gives way over there. This could be on a sample by sample basis, and yours may not have that issue, but this is super heavy and it's kind of a trade-off. But even with the small issue with the Havoc staff, you can see just when we get a close-up look at that face sculpt and all that great detail, I mean, this just has such a presence, and it is a perfect emulation of that CGI model from the show. Let's go ahead and see what kind of articulation we can get out of this guy. So if you've already watched my He-Man review from this series, then you know that articulation, even though it wasn't terrible or anything, it was definitely one of the weaker points of the figure. Let's see how Skeletor fares. You can see that with the head up here, you do have a ball joint that actually has quite a bit more motion than I expected it to. As a matter of fact, oddly, I think he can look up more than He-Man and even look down a little bit more than He-Man. Don't really know what that's about, because the truth is you don't need that very much, because you can see the hood is completely immobile. I'm not sure if there's a more elegant solution to this issue, because it would of course kind of betray the design of the figure a little bit if you had the hood be movable and be attached up here. So I'm not really sure there was a way around that. Especially bizarre considering that this is, of course, a series that's meant to sell toys. You would almost think that they would want to ensure the designs were a little more toy compatible. But still, I think that it's fine, because you can get Skeletor kind of just a little bit if he needs to look from side to side for certain photography or something like that, and you can kind of cheat it. But it is a little weird to see the head move independently of the hood, so it would have been nice if there was a better solution. Looking at the shoulders, you can already tell that this is going to be an issue right here, and sure enough, you get up there and it kind of blocks things. However, he can still get kind of this far up to where you can kind of show the guns off right there. You can only go that far if you're putting the arm up, but honestly, that's pretty much decent enough for what you're going to need to do. He can go back about that far, and that's pretty much all you'd need anyway. But like I said, good news is he can go all the way out to where it's 90 or a little bit beyond. One thing I will say is, unlike He-Man, he can get his shoulders and his entire arms to be more, I guess, right up against his chest like this. And this is something He-Man can't really do. And it's probably the thing that irritates me the most about his articulation. So at least Skeletor has that much going for him. And I guess he's not quite as bulky as He-Man in the shoulders, so I guess that gives him a little more leeway to do that. He's really only inhibited by the kind of big purple protrusions over here. Of course, you have a rotation here at the bicep. You do have a double joint. Of course, you're going to need it with something like this because the biceps are so insanely huge. It works well enough to get you 90, and with biceps this large and arms this large, then yeah, I think that that's pretty decent. Down here at the gauntlets, you can see that you do have a rotation. You also have a rotation here at the wrist. You get a hinge, and just like He-Man, it doesn't really go vertical, but instead it's a horizontal hinge. So that's kind of a shame, because you would also want Skeletor to, I think, hold aloft his staff and call on the power of Havoc, as this Skeletor is a little more super powered. I mean, obviously, right, with his insane physique, Skeletor is never quite this buff. You can also see that down here you have a little bit of a up and down movement at the diaphragm and a little bit of side to side. So that's pretty similar to He-Man. Just like He-Man, there's something up here to block it going down any further. but I do think this is a little more movable than He-Man's bottom of his logo was, so you can probably do a little bit more with that, but I think that works well enough. You also get a side-to-side waist rotation right there, and that's good to have that option. You can also see down here at the legs, you can get Skeletor to do pretty much the splits. He's only slightly inhibited by the loincloth piece, but I think that's plenty. Of course, with this Skeletor, you do have a cut right here at the hip, and you can bring him up about this far to kick, but that's really it. So he is a little more limited than you would think he is, because his loincloth seems like it would allow more than He-Man's, but that's pretty much what you can get. I mean, it's not too bad though. Of course, we also have a double joint knee, and it works even better than the biceps and the elbows do. Down here, we do have a rotation at each of the boots, and we do have a hinge that actually doesn't go back maybe quite as far as He-Man, but it goes forward more. So it's funny how they kind of complement each other in that way. You can also see that we have plenty of ankle rocker pivot, and if you look, let's see if we can get him to go into a wide stance live without falling over. Skeletor, I do feel, might be a little more top heavy than He-Man. Let's see, can we do it? Yep. You can see there's nothing else supporting him or anything like that, and it works really well for all those wide poses. You can probably go wider than that. My base just happened to kind of block it out with some rock formations, so I guess that's the only reason he isn't any wider. Just in terms of sheer bulkiness, Skeletor is an absolutely massive figure. He is a chunk of plastic, and he's not nearly as hollow feeling even as I thought he would be. So let's go ahead and just see what he looks like beside of He-Man, which is, I think, the most obvious and needed comparison. Since Hans and Franz over here are so bulked out, it was hard to even get them on the same base, but you can see that it's almost exactly perfect with the tops of the heads, and they're pretty much eye to eye. I think Skeletor might be slightly larger than He-Man, but that does make sense since He-Man is a tiny boy who transforms and Skeletor is already a grown man. So I am glad to see a little bit of difference, and I think they're just the perfect complement to each other. If you go for one of the bigger figures in the Masterverse line, you'll be looking at, say, New Eternia He-Man here. He is really tall, and you can see that indeed he is taller than Skeletor. It's funny, these CGI figures give quite an illusion of making you feel like that they're probably the biggest figures in the entire Masterverse line, but in terms of height, they're not. So it's kind of funny to see them compared to just a regular He-Man, who is massive. And of course, he'd be right in line with the height of normal Masterverse figures, but not the He-Man. I'd be completely remiss not to compare him with his basic series counterpart for Skeletor from the CGI series. It's funny, I don't think I realized how green in the face that the basic Skeletor was until I put him beside of this guy. It is much more accurate that he is yellow over here. I think this still has plenty of good detail for what it is, but this one definitely brings home the gold. I would be mightily shocked if they ever got around to doing this guy in the Masterverse line, but you never know, color me surprised. Beastman. Thankfully, since Beastman is one of the deluxe figures, he's a little bit bigger than your standard, so I think that you can cheat it a little more effectively, especially if you have Beastman in the background or propped up on something, as I've done in some of the photography for this review. And then it becomes a little easier to sell that they're in the same scale, and you can almost get away with it because he is in that larger scale. Here's one I've been looking forward to seeing is the Evil Lyn, because I remarked in this review, if you've watched it, about how I felt that she was way too tall. And thanks to that very detriment, it is now an asset, as I think that this looks pretty decent in terms of the scale here, especially since Skeletor is supposed to be so hulking. Same with Beastman. I'll be very shocked if they ever get around to doing her in Masterverse. And of course, the most obvious comparison that I know most of you have been waiting for, yes, he looks great with a Hannibal Lecter action figure based on the performance by Mads Mikkelsen. Don't you dare act like you didn't want to see this comparison. I know you did. You know, against all odds, I ended up being a really big fan of this CGI series. I really feel that this He-Man cartoon deserves to be mentioned in the same breath with the other incarnations in that same pantheon of that TV legacy of He-Man. And it's a great show, and if you've not checked it out, then you're just cheating yourself, so make sure you do. Even if you don't like the series very much or you've never watched it, I heartily suggest that you pick up this Skeletor along with the He-Man, of course. You can't really have one without the other. They're so much fun, and in particular, I think that they're really good complements to each other, and they're a really good value. These guys are the basic style of Masterverse figures, meaning that you can get them right around $22, $23, and they'll probably go on sale like most of the Masterverse figures do on Amazon. Of course, I wasn't going to wait for some kind of sale. I had to have them just as soon as I could, and I was absolutely tickled with how these guys turned out. I give an emphatic suggestion that you should definitely pick these guys up. I got mine through Big Bad Toy Store, and I found them to be by far the most reliable when it comes to Masters of the Universe in the last few months. Even if Skeletor and He-Man don't really go with any of the other Masterverse figures besides each other, hey, I think that they make a terrific subset, and even if these are the only CGI styled figures they ever do, then I am glad that they at least got to do He-Man and Skeletor, and they're such a unique and awesome addition to the line. Alright friends, well I certainly hope that you've enjoyed the review today. Of course, be sure to comment, subscribe, and like the video because it really does help us out. And I know that Halloween is coming up really soon, so keep an eye on the channel. You never know, you may see something interesting pop up. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.